The Rangers' twin Vandy boy potential future aces have had some incredible last couple weeks and rightly earned their promotions. Plus, we're going to talk about what Jacob deGrom looked like in his first rehab start. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into today's episode talking about the promotions for Kumar Rocker, for Jack Leiter, and Jacob deGrom's first rehab start after that elbow surgery, this episode is brought to you by SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. Now, the Rangers last night, after Jacob deGrom's first rehab start, they unveiled some news broken by Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News, talking about the two Vandy boys, the potential future twin aces. Dare I say. I'll say at least one potential future ace among that group. But those two will not be pitching on the same team like I thought they would their next turn through the rotation, because Jack Leiter is coming up to the big leagues. Back to the big leagues after a dominant couple of starts. I'll talk more about him in the second segment, but Kumar Rocker showed after his last start on Wednesday, where I was in attendance the second start in a row, and boy howdy did it look like he had absolutely nothing left to prove against AA hitters. And Rangers and Chris Young said, yep, there's nothing more for you to learn here. So he is heading up to the AAA Round Rock Express. What is very exciting about that, number one, is that Kumar Rocker is healthy and looking good, consistent and confident, and that is amazing and the most important and best thing of that. But secondary to that, I'm also really excited that he is going to be pitching in a stadium with TrackMan data, so we will know exact velocities of what he is throwing, exact pitch types of what he is throwing it, when he is throwing it, not having to trust my eye, my scouting eye, on exactly what he's throwing it, and when he's throwing the sinker, when he's throwing the four-seamer, when it's the curveball versus what they will probably deem as a slider. It's not two different breaking balls. It is the same breaking ball. It is a similar thing as to what Emiliano Teodo throws, in that, well, they both grip it like a curveball. Actually, I'm not sure about Teodo, but I know that Kumar Rocker is gripping that breaking ball like a curveball, but he's able to manipulate it to throw it either faster or slower depending on what he's trying to get out of it, whether it's, more spin, more, vertical movement, more accuracy, whatever he's able to do. He manipulates it incredibly well, and it is probably the best non-fastball pitch in the Rangers minor league system. It's between his breaking ball and Emiliano Teodo's. Both of those are just incredible breaking balls, but I mean, this is the guy that the Rangers dreamt of when they drafted him 3rd overall. I know that they signed him below slot value to give a bunch of money to Brock Porter, two guys that were both first-round talents, and hoping that one of them would hit. And while Brock Porter's season and maybe even his career have kind of gone way off the rails this year, Rocker has gone in the opposite direction. He has gone nowhere but up. I mean, the reason that this guy fell so far on prospect lists and prospect boards was because of concerns about, right concerns about his delivery. That first year after the Rangers drafted him, when he pitched in the Arizona Fall League, I don't claim to be an expert in pitching mechanics, but watching his mechanics on the mound in Arizona and talking with Grant Schiller, who is more of an expert on pitching mechanics, was a college pitching coach, does have more of an idea of what's going on there. We were both terrified of what we saw from Kumar Rocker. I mean, he looked just out of sync out of sorts, and the results were there, but it was more about the fear of injury long term. This guy is 6'5", listed at 240, built like a NFL defensive end, because that's what his dad was, and he passed on some of those genetics of being a big, beefy boy, which is exactly the kind of build you want in an ace. And that's what Kumar Rocker is shaping up to potentially be. But he wasn't throwing with his big old beefy legs. He was throwing with his shoulder and not really getting down the mound, not using the full power that he could. I mean, he was still throwing kind of hard. I think it was around 92 to maybe 96. So velocity was dipping off a little bit, and it was really worrisome. And I didn't see him pitch all that much last year, but in the times that I've seen him pitch this year, the delivery looks absolutely phenomenal. It looks like Kumar Rocker did when he was a top 10 pick out of Vanderbilt by the Mets the year before the Rangers ended up drafting him. I mean, he looked like that kind of ace. I mean, it was repeatable. It was clean. He looked confident. He looked like he knew what he was doing. He looked like he had a plan of attack, and he absolutely executed every single time out there. He finishes his time in Frisco with 5 starts, just 1 out shy of 19 innings, 29 strikeouts to just 3 walks, 1 earned run. Just 1. In nearly 20 innings and 5 starts. I mean, barely anybody could reach base against this guy. This is exactly what you dream of when you're thinking of, ooh, if we could have a homegrown pitcher that's actually very, very good. Not just settling for hoping for a middle-of-the-rotation starter, which would be an upgrade on the Rangers' developmental processes in terms of pitching over the last decade plus. But, everybody else, I mean, the White Sox crank out so many random aces for a team that's so terrible. Like maybe the Rangers could just have one, just one homegrown potential future all-star starting pitcher, just one. And Rocker is that. He's a guy whose fastball sits 98 to 99, touched 100 5 times by my estimation, by my looking at the radar gun in his last start. The breaking ball is absolutely disgusting. The changeup is still a work in progress, but got some ugly swings. It was a couple of times it just didn't come out right out of his hand. It looked like and just bounced in the dirt. Was not a competitive pitch, but it's got some promise there. And apparently he's also got a cutter that he has not thrown at all in Double-A, but the Rangers think that it's game ready. And since he hasn't gone through the rotation a third time yet, or through the batting order a third time yet in this season in Double-A, he hasn't really needed it. Not that he even really needed the changeup. I mean, just 4-seamer, sinker, curveball was enough to just absolutely obliterate hitters in the Texas League. And I know the hitters in the Texas League weren't particularly great this year. For instance, that San Antonio lineup that he faced off against last time, not a great lineup. Really not any top-tier prospects that you're looking at and saying, okay, let's see how he could do against a future big leaguer there. No, not really the case, even for most of the Texas League. Kind of a down year offensively around the league, but still, he did what he needed to. He dominated those hitters. He's not just back, he is better, to quote the great Sha'Carri Richardson. And this is exactly what you hope for. He is a little bit on the older side now. He has missed some time with the injuries, but the questions that were there and the prospect fatigue that set in, the overthinking about this guy who has been on people's minds as a potential, future big leaguer since 2018, people just overanalyze things. And there were injury concerns and there were delivery concerns, but those are gone now. I mean, the delivery concerns. There's always injury concerns because he's a pitcher, and that's kind of, unfortunately, what pitchers do nowadays. But this is exactly what the Rangers were hoping for. Heck, this is maybe even more than the Rangers were hoping for. He had lost a little luster when the Rangers selected him with that 3rd overall pick. There was some confusion, and the fact that they got him under slot value, maybe years looking back, is going to look like, wow, the Rangers really, really pulled one off there. But I'm excited to see what he looks like in AAA. I don't think that he is going to see the big leagues by the end of this year, but with what he was throwing in these last couple of starts, I mean, he looked like he could probably get some big league hitters out right now. I don't think the Rangers are going to rush him by any means, but in terms of him maybe cracking the big league rotation next year, I don't think you can throw that out of the question. We'll see what he looks like in AAA, and if the Rangers are going to add him to the 40-man roster and get him to be one of their September call-ups, they're going to have to make some moves and cut somebody loose. And I think there are some spots on the 40-man roster the Rangers could decide to go in a different direction if they want to see Kumar Rocker in the big leagues this year, which I don't know for certain that they do. But I don't think that it would be any kind of disaster, because the stuff that he's throwing right now, it is just absolutely phenomenal. And there is legitimate reason to hope on a Texas Rangers pitching prospect maybe, potentially, being an ace one day. Speaking of those Vandy boys, Jack Leiter, his last couple of starts, has been absolutely phenomenal. But is he ready for the big leagues? We're going to talk about that right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by Liquid IV. When you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. Because baseball and summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. Blast off with the iconic summer flavor of Popsicle Firecracker, a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors as well. Tear, pour, live more. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Powered by LAV Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. It's always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free as well. So no more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. This show is brought to you by SupplyHouse.com. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades. SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. The Rangers take on the Guardians tonight, 6:10 p.m. Central Time. First pitch, Nate Eovaldi versus Tanner Bybee. You can catch every pitch of the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search Rangers. Now, the Rangers don't just have one former Vanderbilt first-round pitcher in their minor league system. They have two. Well, actually, I guess technically, as of next week, it will be just one, because Jack Leiter is heading back up to the big leagues. His last two starts in August after a couple of weeks off just for some rest to make sure that they are limiting his workload. Jack Leiter has looked absolutely sensational. I mean, he looks like a completely different guy. He looks like the Jack Leiter that the Rangers drafted. A guy who goes out there, throws gas, and blows hitters away, and just knows, I'm Jack Leiter, and I'm better than you, and I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to dominate you. And that's what he's done in these two starts in August. The fastball has been up incredibly high. I mean, the velocity on everything has been way, way up. In his first start in August after those 2 weeks off, he threw 62 pitches, and the fastball, which on the year had averaged 95.6 miles an hour, was averaging 98.6 miles an hour, up 3 whole miles an hour. The slider, up 4.5 miles an hour. Curveball, up 4.5 miles an hour. Changeup, up 3 miles an hour as well, though he only threw 2 of those in that start. Wasn't able to go as deep into that game, but the strikeouts were just absolutely incredible. I mean, 21 swings and misses of 34 swings, and that was on 62 pitches. So more than a third of the pitches that Jack threw in that first start were swings and misses. He was just so darn good. And I thought, okay, Jack, all right, I see you. Spin rate was up on all those pitches as well, not just the velocity. I thought, okay, go out there and do it again, please. And you know what? He did. His next start out, which is the same night as Kumar Rocker, I didn't get to watch the full thing, just got to watch that final inning of work for him, but he looked just about as good and went even deeper into the game, threw more pitches in that game, wasn't quite getting the crazy amount of swings and misses in that next one, but the velocity was still way up over where it's been in the past. Averaged 97.8 miles an hour, up 2.2 miles an hour over the season average. The slider was up nearly 2 miles an hour as well. The curveball also up 2 miles an hour as well. But he threw 75 pitches in that one and just looked absolutely dominant. In these 2 starts in August, he's got 9 1/3 innings, 20 strikeouts to just 2 walks. Let me say that again. 20 strikeouts, 2 walks in 9 1/3 innings. That's insane. That's absolutely insane levels of swing and miss. And the Rangers said, okay, all right, Jack. Been waiting on you to force your way into this big league rotation. You have 2 starts like that, and you kind of forced your way in there. That's what he's doing. Though the Rangers were hoping that spot would be filled by Max Scherzer coming back. I'll talk more about him and his rehab and why he's not making his rehab start tonight in Frisco on Friday. But Jack Leiter looked absolutely fantastic. He looked free. He looked easy. He looked like he was unburdened by the frustrations and the mind-numbing monotony of making the same mistakes over the last few seasons since he got drafted. The pressure that was put on him to be Jack Leiter, to be amazing, to be the best in a difficult challenge in his first year in the minor leagues of just starting in AA. Not only just starting in AA, but starting in Frisco, which I love Frisco. I love that it's right here. I love that fans of the Texas Rangers who live in the area get to go out and watch future Rangers out there in Frisco. That's all great. But there's also something to starting not in Frisco, not starting with all those eyes on you. And everybody out there for the whole first season of Jack Leiter's first pro career, they were out there in force. Media was out there in force, which it normally isn't. This week has been a little different, with Kumar Rocker looking amazing, with Jacob deGrom being out there last night and the Rangers having an off day. There was a lot of media out there, and there was going to be a lot of media tonight if Max Scherzer made his rehab start, but alas, we will get into that later on in this show. But Jack Leiter, he's good at dealing with the pressure, but that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid, especially when you're not having success, especially when you're not, making those adjustments. Not for lack of trying. He's a smart kid. He listens to what the Rangers say, but I think there was also probably a little bit too much of parental influence there. His dad was at nearly every one of his starts, it felt like. And if he wasn't at every one of his starts, he was watching every one of his starts and weighing in with a lot of thoughts. And, having a former all-star father is very helpful at times. Of listening to his wisdom, listening to his experience, but eventually that can get to be a little overbearing. I don't want to speculate because I'm not hanging out with Jack and talking to his dad every single day and talking to him, but I feel like there might have been a bit too much influence there. And We haven't seen as much of Al Leiter at every single start. I think that he might have backed off just a little bit and let the Rangers developmental team do what they do best and develop him. And let him work and let Jack be Jack, not just Al's son. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what has led to this breakout, but I am not questioning it. I am loving it. I am still skeptical about how well this maintains in the big leagues. I'd still like him to throw a few more curveballs, work on that pitch mix of not being so much reliant on just the fastball and the slider. As great as they are and as dominant as they look now, big league hitters are really freaking good and a lot better than AAA hitters, who are also pretty good. And a lot of them are former big league hitters. But it seems like Jack is ready, and it seems like a lot of the learning that Jack will have to do will be at the big league level. It doesn't seem like there's all that much for him left to learn in AAA, and this test in the big leagues, I think he's finally ready for it now. Those first couple starts in the big leagues this year, he wasn't ready for it. The Rangers pushed him because they needed to push him because of injuries and setbacks and all kinds of other things in the big league rotation. And next year, the Rangers are going to need him. Flat out, they're going to need Jack Leiter in their big league rotation next year, providing some kind of value and figuring some things out. And there's going to be a lot learned about Jack Leiter and his future and what his ceiling actually is in the big leagues. When he was drafted, that ceiling was number 2 starter. After the last couple of years, the ceiling kind of looked like really good reliever, and now I'm not so sure. I think it might be back to number 2 starter. If the ceiling is number 3 starter and that ends up being what he is and a pretty solid number 3 starter, heck, that's great. That's a developmental win. If he ends up just being a nasty, sick, nasty, absolutely dominant back-end reliever, then you still got some value there. That's something the Rangers haven't developed in a little while, and having a cheap, controllable, elite reliever in the back end of your pen, if it ends up being the case that both him and Teodo are elite relief options, it's not ideal. You'd rather them be starting pitchers, but if that's the case, then that's a really nasty back end of your pen for 5-6 years if they can continue to be that for the 5-6 years that the Rangers, well, the 6 years the Rangers will have them under team control. But Jack Leiter has proved that he is ready for that big league challenge. He has looked absolutely fantastic, and I'm hoping that this kind of velocity, this kind of, movement, this kind of confidence and free and easiness, it can stay there in the big leagues. Because that, I think even more than the velocity in the stuff, is going to decide how well Jack Leiter fares when he gets back in the big leagues. Hopefully, I'm thinking sometime next week. Coming up to talk about Jacob deGrom and a couple other Rangers pitching prospects. One who got promoted and one who might be even better than Jack Leiter. Right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by TonaI. When life gets busy, fitting a workout in can be stressful. But with TonaI, you get efficient workouts personalized just for you, and they're available with the amount of time that you have. TonaI is the world's smartest and most efficient strength training system that helps get you stronger. Powered by AI, TonaI learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as TonaI will optimize every workout just for you. Unlike traditional equipment, TonaI uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. From professional athletes to the mom of 3, TonaI is trusted by thousands who have become their strongest. So right now, TonaI is offering our listeners $200 off your TonaI purchase with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's TonaI.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's TonaI.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. Now, the Rangers had some other prospect promotion news this week. Heading up from High A Hickory is going to be Cole Drake, the left-handed starting pitcher who has been dominant with the Hickory Crawdads. I don't know exactly when he's going to make his first start for AA. I'm assuming it's probably going to be maybe on Sunday. or maybe it'll be next week when the Rough Riders are on the road. Congratulations to Cole Drake. He's been absolutely dominant so far this season, and I'm excited to finally watch him in Frisco. Another guy who I'm excited to see in Frisco. Don't know exactly when that'll be, but I'm hoping it's maybe by the end of this season with the way that he's been pitching. That is Alejandro Rosario. Before Kumar Rocker came back and looked as dominant as we have ever seen him, which, by the way, I might, we'll see what happens in the spring or in January when I update my top 30 prospect rankings, but don't be surprised if Kumar Rocker is up there at the top of the list. And another guy who jumped way up there this year is, of course, Alejandro Rosario. Had another dominant start for Hickory last night. He's got a 2.52 ERA in 7 games for Hickory. He's got 35 and 2/3 innings, 54 strikeouts. I mean, he's walking under 2 hitters per 9, striking out more than 13.5 per 9. The guy has absolutely dominated that league, and I am very ready to see him in AA Frisco. But as good as Kumar Rocker was this week, I gotta say, the best guy that I've seen pitch in Frisco probably ever. Yeah, I think probably ever. Maybe it was PQ Darvish when he was rehabbing, but it was the one, the only Jacob freaking deGrom in Frisco last night, looking pretty much like Jacob deGrom. It's not often you see a 34-year-old in AA. It's definitely not often you see a guy with multiple Cy Youngs in AA, but yeah, he looked like himself. I mean, the fastball velocity was there. Said the command wasn't quite there, but the slider, dear God, those poor AA hitters of the San Antonio Missions. I mean, it's a Jacob deGrom slider, which makes big leaguers, established big leaguers, and even very good big leaguers occasionally look just absolutely foolish. And those poor kids had absolutely no chance to hit that slider. But a couple of them did hit the fastball, including the first 2 of the game. Including the second hitter, who got an RBI double. Excuse me, I think it was an RBI single. After deGrom got ahead 0-2 with a couple of sliders, he tried to go up above the zone with a fastball that ended up getting hit. And he talked about it after the game that, well, I probably could have buried him with the slider, but I wanted to use that fastball because it's about simulating actual games, of what it's going to be like to face big leaguers. He said it's the same reason why he threw some changeups last night, which looked mostly very good. Had one that he just absolutely yanked. He said somewhere in the 2 to 4 range. Couldn't remember exactly how many changeups he threw, but one pitch he didn't throw, which I was a little curious about, and he hadn't talked about throwing it in his bullpens before, was the curveball. Now, the curveball is definitely his 4th pitch. He's got 3 pitches, 2 pitches that are probably 80 grade in the slider, the fastball. Changeup also probably a double plus pitch, and the curveball, heck, if he was anybody else and didn't have, 3 double plus pitches, then the curveball would maybe be talked about a little bit more, because it's at least a plus, if not a double plus pitch that he doesn't really use that much because he doesn't freaking need to. So I asked him about it. I said, were you throwing any curveballs? There's nothing in that, velo band of 80 to 84, which is about where the curveball is. And he said, no, I haven't been throwing that. I haven't been working on that because, it's not one of my best 3 pitches. So I figure since I'm trying to just get up to the big leagues this year, make sure that the rehab is done and start the offseason like normal, working on honing in a 4th pitch is just going to make that take a little bit longer. So he's not really working on it for this year. So that was interesting. And I thought it was a good answer. Makes some sense. Of course, he had some frustration about, getting hit, giving up runs ever in any outing. I mean, whether it's spring trading, whether it's even in a bullpen session, he is that ultimate competitor, that mindset that you like to have in an ace, in a guy who is going to be the top of your rotation next year. That is what you like to have. I mean, he's not letting it, get the best of him, of just trying to get outs and get dominant. He knows what he needs to do in a rehab start. He knows what he needs to work on so he can be ready to dominate big league hitters once he gets back. But he talked about feeling very good after the game. He said, I'll know a little bit more about how I'm feeling, what the next steps are tomorrow. So at this point, I'm anticipating him making his next rehab start. Unfortunately, not in Frisco, because the Rough Riders will be on the road. It's going to be probably either Thursday or maybe it'll be on Wednesday next week. I don't think it'll be as early as Tuesday, but it will almost certainly be in Round Rock with the Express as they take on Oklahoma City, because they will be at home, and sending him on the road for a AA game doesn't really make the most sense for your ace. He'll throw another bullpen. He's probably going to add an inning and 15 pitches of work. He threw 2 innings last night, 29 pitches, did allow the 1 run, 3 strikeouts, just absolute dominance from him in that game, looking pretty much like Jacob deGrom. And just seeing him on the hill, seeing him happy, seeing him, smiling and looking like himself, it was just a good sight to see for a guy who has been incredibly frustrated that he couldn't compete in the World Series, that he couldn't help his team get over that finish line. They ended up winning for him and winning without him, but I know he wants to get back on that hill, and I'm sure he's disappointed that he won't get a chance to pitch in games that really matter down the stretch, but just getting back on a big league hill is important for him, as I'm sure it's important for Max Scherzer to hopefully do at some point this year. Because Max Scherzer will not make his start tonight in Frisco. Rangers PR went and told all of us in the media suite right before this game was starting that Max Scherzer will not make his start on Friday. He is still dealing with shoulder fatigue. He got that injection and felt really good, I think at some point this week. Maybe it was last week, but he's just not quite ready to make that rehab start just yet. They don't know exactly when his rehab start will be, and it is a bummer for those minor leaguers, because what big leaguers do every time they are on a rehab assignment, especially ones who have filled their bank accounts as fruitfully and has had as dominant careers as guys like Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, those guys will always buy a big old spread for those minor leaguers. Last night, Jacob deGrom, I couldn't remember exactly what the name of the restaurant was, but he made sure to get a nice spread of steak and lobster for those AA kids. I'm sure Max Scherzer would also bust out the big spread for those youngsters. Not sure exactly what he'd get, but a real bummer for those kids missing out on 2 back-to-back days of eating like absolute kings. But it was just fun to go out there to see Jacob deGrom. He's probably going to make about 4 rehab starts is the plan, and then eventually work up to 5 innings and 75 pitches. The Rough Riders will be at home the week after next. So if you're penciling in your calendar there, that might end up being that Tuesday. Could be when we see Jacob deGrom make his 3rd rehab start, if you're just, wanting to pencil in maybe seeing one of the best pitchers of his generation doing it on the cheap, but doing it in a more intimate and fun environment, and doing it against hitters who are going to look absolutely foolish. It is a fantastic time, and I highly, highly recommend it. Just seeing him back on the hill brought me some supreme joy. Watching Kumar Rocker dominate in AA brought me some supreme joy as well. And hopefully, watching Jack Leiter dominate in the big leagues will bring me maybe even more joy than those two put together. But that's going to do it for this week's shows. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.